I'm Kelsey. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I'm wearing one of my fancy booktube hats, and I don't know about you, but in the past few weeks there have been times when I have felt stressed, worried, concerned for the world we live in as I remain holed up by myself, watching the terrible news roll in, so I thought I might do something a little different for this next video. I thought I might try to channel some calming energy into this particular book haul. This book haul is all of the books that I acquired in February and March, so a number of them from before we were in this state of lockdown, and then also a few that have arrived by mail since. Now, I also have ordered some books that came in the mail this month that I'm not including in this haul because I'm not yet sure whether I'm going to have more books coming in this month or not. I'm sort of on the fence about whether to place another order of some more new releases that I've been anticipating. But the books that I purchased in stores in this book haul, were purchased when the world was different than it is now. These 2 months of book buying represent a change that has happened. And so as I process that change, I've decided that this February-March book haul will be a soothing, intimate, sort of calm sort of book haul, which is a different energy than how I normally film booktube videos. So I have a mug of soothing tea with me. I have lit some lovely candles. This is a scented one. This one, I don't know if you can see that it's lit because the flame is tiny and way down in there. And I honestly don't know if this video is going to turn out genuinely soothing in tone or if it might veer into the comedic side of things. Hopefully it will be a little bit of both. But I'm going to cue up some soothing music. I'm going to invite you all to breathe with me. Breathe in. And breathe out. And I'm going to talk about the used books that I bought in February. These are all books from a used bookstore that I go to that has a substantial $1 fiction section, and these were all books that I bought there for $1 each. The first is a book that I am fairly certain that I read sometime in my childhood because this was one of my favorite childhood authors, and even though I'm pretty sure I never owned a copy of this book, the cover art stirs some deep nostalgia for me, so I'm certain that I read it, and it is Midnight Magic by Avi. This is a children's middle grade book that was published in 1999. It is about a boy who is the servant of a magician. And I would love to reread this as a bit of a comfort read and see if it rings any bells when I start to read it, because even though I feel that I read this book, I don't remember anything about it. This one is sort of going right on that pile of books that I have sitting on hand that I would really like to read as comfort reads in these trying times. My TBR is pretty packed, so I don't know how many of those books I'll actually get to, but this is certainly an option. And now again, breathe in and breathe out. The second $1 book I have is Wheel of the Infinite by Martha Wells. I'm unfamiliar with this particular book. I don't think I know anyone who's really talked about it. I think it is a fantasy standalone of the sort where the very fabric of the universe is threatened. This is going to be so hard to stay calm. This was published in the year 2000. I believe it was Martha Wells's 4th novel, and it looks oh so good with my hat. Now again, I invite you to breathe in and breathe out. And then the next book is a book by N.K. Jemisin. This is The Broken Kingdoms, which is the second book in the Inheritance trilogy. I have owned the first book in this trilogy, The 100,000 Kingdoms, since before I had read anything by Jemisin, and I still haven't read it, in part because I only had that first book. The copy of the first book that I own is a mass market paperback, and this is a trade paperback, so they don't match. And it just has to not be a problem. So now I'm going to breathe in again. And breathe out. The next book is a relatively new release. This was a 2019 debut novel. It is Unnatural Magic by C.M. Waggoner. This takes place in a world that has both humans and trolls. We follow two women, one of whom is a human and one of whom is a troll. This promises magic, gender politics, friendship, and perhaps also a murder mystery. It's blurbed by a truly remarkable lineup of authors, including Tamara Pierce, Juliet Marillier, Alex E. Harrow, and Kat Howard. And honestly, I was hoping a little bit that C.M. Waggoner might end up on the shortlist for the Astounding Award this year, so I would have an excuse to prioritize this, but it was not to be so. I think she'll still be eligible next year. And so now, let us breathe in and breathe out. There's nothing stressful about all these books on my TBR, not at all. Not at all. Ooh, this next one is beautiful, and I had almost forgotten that I bought it. This was another one that I got for $1. It's this beautiful, like, new hardcover of The Binding by Bridget Collins, which is another debut novel, but one that I haven't actually heard a whole lot about. I believe this is a historical fantasy novel, but it was released by more of a general fiction publisher, and so I haven't really seen it discussed in sci-fi and fantasy circles at all. But the cover, this is a bit of a cover buy, it is just beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to have to correct myself here. This is not a debut novel, but this is the author's first adult novel. She's written young adult fiction as B.R. Collins. And I don't immediately recognize the titles of any of those young adult books. She's apparently also a playwright. But this seems to involve magical bookbinding, which is the sort of thing that tends to attract me. Other than that, this was very much a cover buy because beautiful. Beautiful. And so now I'm going to breathe in again and breathe out, and you can continue to do this with me if you like, or not, whatever you like. And then the last $1 book purchase. Oh boy. This is one of those things where I'm not usually a person to buy multiple copies of the same book in different editions just because I like them. But this one I caved because it was only $1, and this is probably my favorite edition of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. It is huge. This is the American first edition with the white cover. It also exists vice versa, I believe, with the black cover with the white raven. My edition of this book that I previously owned is the red UK paperback, which I liked a lot, but after I read it and then I loaned it to someone, it's been read 2 times, the spine has gotten a little broken and worn, and so I've decided that that copy will be my loaning copy of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I have loaned it to my best friend for her to read during this time of lockdown. About a week or so before we had our stay-at-home order here in New York, I made sure she had plenty of reading supplies on loan from me. And this copy will go nicely here with these other books of the same height that I like to feature on this shelf. There you go, it has already taken its rightful place. And that is the end of the used books that I bought in stores before we were all staying in our homes. And now we are going to breathe in and breathe out. Next, I have 2 books that I bought at a Barnes & Noble in February before things got terrible. Oh, calm, calm, calm. Tea, tea, tea. At Barnes & Noble, I used a member coupon that I had to get some percentage, I forget what, off of The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 7 by Nagabe. This is a manga series that I've talked about at some length on my channel before. I have really enjoyed volumes 1 through 6. And then we're going to breathe in and breathe out. And then while I was there, I happened to wander through the bargain book section, because of course I did, and there was a shelf of books that were discounted even from their original bargain price. These absolutely must go. Last copies left $3 each. And so for only $3, I got a copy of Ancillary Mercy by Leckie. This is the 3rd book in the Imperial Wretch series. It is a trilogy. I own the first one, Ancillary Justice, but I do not own the 2nd book, Ancillary Sword. I had seen copies of this for sale at Barnes & Noble for the bargain price of $5.98, and I had passed because, you know what? I don't have the 2nd one, and I haven't read the 1st one yet, but for $3? So now I am not going to stress the fact that I don't have book 2, and instead I'm going to breathe in and breathe out. Oh. And then it was March, and in March, things began to change, and that was when I placed my first online order of books of the shutdown, and that was an order of books from Book Outlet, since they were having a sale, and possibly still are. I don't know if it's the same sale or if they technically ended one sale and started another one. Lots of cheap books. But they had some things I'd had my eye on for a while, and so I bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. The first is a very impulsy sort of purchase for me. This is Phoenix Unbound by Grace Draven, which is the first book in a series that's going to be called The Fallen Empire. I don't think the 2nd book is out yet, but Grace Draven writes fantasy romance. And I have heard some really excellent reviews of her previous self-published books. This, I think, is her first traditionally published series, and it's published by Ace, which is a fantasy science fiction publisher, not a romance publisher, but I know that fantasy romance is what she does, and that she's praised for both her romance storylines and the fantasy world building in her books. I think that perhaps romance and other genres, like perhaps cozy mysteries, are the sort of thing that I would like to be reading right now. It is, however, Sci-Fi and Fantasy Awards season, so I'm still working really hard to get through the BookTube SFF Award shortlist, and we'll be starting on the Hugo shortlist soon. So I'm really not sure if I'll end up picking up something like this soon or not, but it's an option. Again, I'm trying so hard not to stress it, and so I will breathe in. And I will breathe out. Ooh. The next book I bought is a dystopian, so this is one that I am definitely not planning on picking up anytime soon, but it is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This is the first in a duology, and they've been recently re-released with these beautiful new covers that I've sort of been envying from a distance, and I decided to take the plunge and order this copy. I have actually never read Butler before because I've never quite known where to start. The book that most people recommend starting with is Kindred, which I don't particularly want to read for reasons I don't need to get into. But I think this is one that people have been talking about quite a bit in the last few years as having been very prescient in retrospect and very relevant to today's political strife. Oh boy! Calm, 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 calm. I am so calm, so calm. I only need to stay this calm for a little while longer. Next is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. Goss is an author whose short work and poetry I absolutely love. I have not yet read her novels. This is the first book in the Athena Club series, I think is what it's called, and it imagines women who are daughters and relatives of men from 19th century sci-fi horror fantasy stories and their adventures together. Part of what intimidates me here is that I know I haven't read a number of the books that are the source material for this series. I have read Frankenstein. I read it in high school. I despised it. But other than that one, I think I do have some classic literature reading to do to prep for diving into this. Next is a middle grade novel from an author whose adult work I have read. This is The Cats of Tanglewood Forest by Charles Lint. And almost exactly on cue, guess who showed up? Floof, floof. Guess who's showed up? Floof, floof, floof. Nothing more calming than a good floof. Oh, such a good floof. She's mad I'm not paying attention to her. Such a good fluff, fluff, fluff. Goodbye. She's going to just stare at me now and wait for me to finish. That's her with the tripod. Oh, I'm not paying attention to her. So sad. She wants attention, but I'm back and she'll get her attention soon. The Cats of Tanglewood Forest is one of two Newford books that are middle grade instead of adult. Newford is a companion series of urban fantasy stories set in this fictional city. And this one is beautifully, beautifully illustrated by Charles Vess. I knew that these two middle grade books, the other one that I don't think I own is The Seven Wild Sisters. I knew that these were both illustrated by Charles Vess, but I didn't know that they were going to be this heavily illustrated with color illustrations. This is just gorgeous. I did not understand the level of gorgeous I was getting myself in for, and I'm so pleased now that I have this level of gorgeous. I suppose I should follow that one up with the other illustrated visual arts style book. This is Tales from Outer Suburbia by Shaun Tan. I've really been wanting to read more of Shaun Tan's work for a while now. These are all stories that are told in different combinations of illustration and text, and all in slightly different styles. So some of them are sort of like this, There are some very beautiful full-page, full-spread illustrations, like this one from the cover. There's something in the middle here that appears to be told in a very interesting format with little scraps of paper, but this is basically a collection of mixed format stories, and I think this would be a really great readathon book, perhaps, or perhaps just a nice little escape. So now I'm going to breathe in again, and breathe out. The last book from that book outlet order is another one that is of a genre that I might like to dabble in right now if I could get away from fantasy and science fiction for a little bit. This is A Curious Beginning, a Veronica Speedwell mystery, the first in the series by Deanna Raybourn. This is a series I have heard great things about that is historical Victorian era mysteries. They have beautiful covers, and it's one of those series that I've thought sort of for a long time that if I had a moment in my life where I wanted to go back to reading some mysteries, this is one of the series I would like to pick up. So again, I don't know if that's going to be happening soon or not, but it's nice to have the option. And now at the end of that book outlet order, let's all breathe in and breathe out. And then I have just one more book, just one. This one more book is a very lucky book because I won it in a Goodreads giveaway. It is an ARC copy of Lobizona by Romina Garber. I posted a photo of this with Esme on my Instagram, so you might have known that this one was coming. Now this is a young adult title that is scheduled for May 2020 according to the spine. It's from Wednesday Books. Romina Garber has a previous YA series published under the name Romina Russell, so I'm not sure why the rebranding, but that's who this is. It has a beautiful, beautiful cover, and I believe that this is a contemporary fantasy story that deals with the American immigration system and uses Argentinian folklore and has some werewolves in it. And there you have it, the end of my very calming or hilarious, depending on how you chose to take it, book haul. I hope it was one or the other, not just boring. My room now smells lovely because of this scented candle. My tea, however, has gone cold. Anyhow, let me know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning to. Let me know what you think. Anyhow, I hope you are having a calm day. So calm. That is all. Bye for now.